What mechanism does U.S. think could be put in place to improve the lawlessness, to improve the law and order in Gaza to allow aid distribution? Is there anything specific?
Of course, long term, we want to see a ceasefire.
Is this the best option right now for U.S. government to improve distribution and to get in more aid into Gaza?
The best option is to get a ceasefire.
No,
I'm not.
The IPC said that it's such a precarious situation that it could backslide into famine at any point. What is your comment on that? I mean, they are acknowledging that there's been improvements in the north, but at the same time, it's such a precarious situation.
I think it confirms two things. Number one, as the IPC itself said, we need to get a ceasefire.
See if I could ask you for a reaction to Medicines Sans Frontiers saying that one of their colleagues, Fadi al-Wadia, was killed in an attack this morning. The attack killed 5 other people, including 3 children. Do you have any comment on that?
So obviously we mourn the loss of any civilian life. I don't have any particulars with regard to that specific attack, but obviously we don't want to see any civilians killed in this conflict, and that's one of the reasons why we continue to pursue a ceasefire. Good afternoon. I do not have any opening comments, so Matt, where's the blazer? I'm not used to seeing you.
It's too damn hot.
It is hot, but it's nice and cool. It's a nice, hopefully 65 degrees in this room as I like it. So
I'm not wearing it because it's too hot. Anyway, there seems to be a lot of concern that the UN is going to pull out of Gaza and not halt its relief assistance operations there. I understand there was some kind of a meeting that you guys brokered or tried or arranged yesterday to try to, figure out a way that they could keep operating. Okay, what can you tell us about that?
I can't speak to a meeting yesterday from here. I can go back and work on details of that after the briefing, but I can tell you that this is an issue that we have been intensely focused on. Our special envoy for Middle East humanitarian issues, Lise Grande, has been working with the UN and with various Israeli government entities to try to figure out a way to allow UN workers to safely do their jobs and deliver humanitarian assistance. We have seen over the past few weeks a big backlog of humanitarian assistance at Kerem Shalom. So a lot of trucks that have made it to Kerem Shalom, but then have not made it out of Kerem Shalom into the Gaza Strip where they can deliver goods, and they largely haven't been able to move because of a breakdown in security on the ground. This isn't a breakdown in security where trucks are being shot by Hamas or by the IDF. It is just random looting and criminal gangs and criminal actors who have been attacking trucks. And so we have been working with the UN and Israel to try and find a solution to that problem, including such ideas as trying to make sure that UN workers have personal protective equipment, that they have radios and other communications equipment so they can communicate with each other and safely move around Gaza, and that work is continuing.
Okay, I'm sorry, you said that some of these trucks were being shut up by the IDF?
No, I said they are not. So when you come to say not, this is not, so, obviously we've had issues in the past where there have been deconfliction issues and you've seen strikes on convoys by the IDF, and you've had other incidents where convoys have been diverted by Hamas. That's not what the current problem is. The current problem is they're being attacked by criminal elements inside Gaza.
Okay, so where do things stand right now as far as you understand it?
So there is aid that is moving, both commercial trucks and then humanitarian aid that is moving from Kerem Shalom.
Well, isn't humanitarian aid on the commercial trucks?
There's commercial trucks that include food and other humanitarian goods, but they're sold on the market, in the free market inside Gaza, and those have been moving.
The free market?
It is a free capitalist market for what's worth. There are markets in Gaza where these goods are sold. Okay. And there has been a fairly substantial amount of commercial activity, but that in no way accounts for all the need, because there are obviously a lot of people in Gaza who don't have access to money, don't have access to any way to pay for those goods. And so we need to see humanitarian assistance sustained too. And that has slowed out of Kerem Shalom because of this breakdown in activity. There still has been a fair amount of humanitarian assistance going into northern Gaza over the Jordan route. and stuff coming in from Ashdod, but there has been a problem in southern Gaza that we've been working to try
I'll
to
stop. I'll
resolve.
leave it to others to talk about the free market that exists in Gaza. But
So on that, what mechanism does U.S. think could be put in place to improve the lawlessness, to improve the law and order in Gaza to allow aid distribution? Is there anything specific you guys are talking about?
Let me answer it two ways. One is in the short term. As I said, we were working through this with the UN and the IDF and other COGAT and others inside the Israeli government. Some of this is the measures I just talked about, and there are other things that I don't want to get into from here because they're the subject of conversations with those two parties that I don't think should be made public. And then, of course, long term, we want to see a ceasefire and the reestablishment of Palestinian-led governance, and ultimately we have ideas for providing security inside Gaza and providing governance and reconstruction, all of these things that would go to a restoration of law and order. But that is a long-term, it in no way accounts for the here and now, which is what we're working on, as I said, with the UN and the government of Israel.
And who's responsible, in your eyes, for putting that kind of mechanism in place, especially when it comes to security?
So right now, it's something that needs to be resolved between the UN and the IDF. Obviously, the IDF is the dominant security actor inside southern Gaza right now. There are IDF brigades that are operating inside southern Gaza. The UN is the humanitarian implementer who is carrying out the delivery of humanitarian assistance. So they need to be able to work together to resolve this security situation.
And is this the best option right now for U.S. government to improve distribution and to get in more aid into Gaza?
The best option is to get a ceasefire. That is That is the best option.
Yeah,
the best option is to get to a ceasefire and resolute.
That has been very elusive.
Hostilities.
So we're talking about in the meantime. I'm wondering
Yeah.
if there are any other avenues that you are pursuing, or is this the main one?
This is the main one. There is no substitute for the land route aid coming in through Kerem Shalom. Obviously, we've been able to supplement aid coming in through the ground at times. We've been able to supplement it through the pier, and we've been able to supplement it at times through airdrops, but those are supplements. The main delivery route needs to continue to be through gates into Gaza.
Right. And final thing is, and I've asked whether this is the main thing and this is your best option, because you must have seen IPC's update. It now talks about nearly 500,000 people are facing the most severe form of starvation. And they say clearly that after some slight improvement, there's renewed deterioration after Israel has started its Rafah offensive. So, how is the U.S. going to remedy this situation? And help us wrap our heads around the fact that how are we still in this situation 8 months into this war?
So I think we are in this situation because of the difficulty that this conflict poses to delivering humanitarian assistance. And it is not just a question, as we've seen over the past month or so, of getting humanitarian assistance delivered to the gates. There was a long time where we were just trying to get the numbers of trucks coming into Kerem Shalom every day up. We were able to get the number of trucks coming into Kerem Shalom up, and now we're dealing with a different problem on the other side, which is the breakdown of law and order and the inability in some cases, or at least the extreme difficulty, of delivering humanitarian assistance inside Gaza. That was actually a problem several months ago. We were able to work to resolve it. It has become a problem again. So these are always problems that pop up that we are trying to resolve, which is why I say, and this is something the IPC said in their report today, which is the only real way to fully resolve these challenges is to get a ceasefire. You can work to deal with problems as they pop up, but I think our experience shows us over the past 8 months that to fully get the amount of humanitarian assistance into Gaza and then delivered to the people in Gaza who need it, we need to see a ceasefire. Another thing I want to say about the IPC report, though, obviously it confirmed what we all know and what we've been dealing with for some time, is that the humanitarian situation on the ground is extremely dire. That's why we have been so incredibly focused on alleviating that situation. It did note some improvements, however, especially in the north, and I think it is important to note that in their last report in March, the IPC predicted that famine was imminent in the north and that we would reach famine, I think it said, by May. The United States government intervened and did a lot of work to get Erez Gate open, Zikum open, to get Ashdod Port open, to get humanitarian assistance delivered into the north, and that has happened. Now, the IPC assessed today that that prediction ultimately did not bear true, because, and I think you have to assess it's because of those efforts to get humanitarian assistance, which is in no way to declare that the job is finished. Of course, the work remains ongoing. The situation is still incredibly dire. We need to continue to get more humanitarian assistance into the north, and of course, address the stagnation and in some cases the reversal in situation in the south, and that's what we're trying to do.
Final thing, sorry. Did you get any specific assurance from Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant towards this end yesterday?
So I don't want to speak to the specifics of it, but I can tell you that we went through a number of specific things that we want to see resolved when it comes to the humanitarian situation, and got assurance to continue to work on those, and we'll follow through with the government of Israel in the coming days.
Can I follow up on that, Matt? The IPC said that it's such a precarious situation that it could backslide into famine at any point. What is your comment on that? I mean, like, they are acknowledging that there's been improvements in the north, but at the same time, it's such a precarious situation.
I think it confirms two things. Number one, as the IPC itself said, we need to get a ceasefire. And that is the best way, bar none, to alleviate the humanitarian situation on the ground and alleviate the very real, very tragic of the situation of the Palestinian people. And that is why we are working every day to try to get a ceasefire. It's why we were so disappointed that Hamas rejected the ceasefire proposal that was on the table, that the United Nations Security Council and countries around the world endorsed. The second thing is that we can't wait for a ceasefire, obviously, even as we try to get one, and we need to do more to improve the humanitarian situation on the ground, and that's what we're trying to do, as I just mentioned, through working to resolve these issues between the government of Israel, the Israeli security forces, and the UN humanitarian agencies.
And is there any engagement with these criminal elements that you keep referencing through mediators or anything? Like, how are you convinced that a ceasefire would convince these actors?
Not that the United States government is engaged in. I can't speak to other parties. But we do. I mean, we just assess that a ceasefire leads to a general calm in all areas that would allow us to get more humanitarian assistance safely, and it would allow people to operate more safely inside Gaza.
And this may be a DoD question, but why does the U.S. continue to offload all of this aid from the pier when the UN is not operating to distribute?
I would defer to DoD on that. Who's the operator there? Yeah, Jacques.
Go to Lebanon, the Lebanon part of the equation. Maybe just to begin with a couple of specific things. I know yesterday, in response to a question, I think from Michelle, you said that you can talk about the Daily Telegraph report, whether it was factual, whatever. Is there anything more you can say about that, whether there is a finding that Hezbollah is doing?
No, I can't speak to it in detail, and that's a matter that we take extremely seriously.
Is there still some process to look into?
I don't have any kind of assessment to offer. That was a report that we read in the Telegraph, and something we take seriously, but I don't have an assessment about the underlying factual claims in that report.
This is about the airport?
Yeah.
It hasn't been known for decades that southern Beirut, including the airport, is run by Hezbollah?
It's a different question than what was in the Telegraph report.
If they're storing weapons.
Yeah.
One other thing specifically in Lebanon, the Canadians just issued a travel alert saying that get out while you can, basically. Is the travel advice still the same for Americans?
It is still the same for Americans as it has been.
Okay, no plans. I mean, obviously.
It's something we always review and update based on matters on the ground, but it's something that hasn't changed.
Sure. And a bit more broadly on Lebanon, both the Secretary yesterday and in your readout and Defense Secretary Austin today are talking about the importance of diplomacy in Lebanon, raising this with Defense Minister Gallant. What's your assessment on that right now? I mean, do you think that there's are we headed to a larger conflict in Lebanon? What are the chances right now of a diplomatic resolution?
So I, as usual, would never want to assign a percentage chance to anything of this nature. I would say that we think a diplomatic resolution is possible. We think it is in the interest of all parties, and I will say that that Minister Gallant confirmed to the Secretary yesterday that is Israel's preferred outcome, that they would prefer a diplomatic resolution to the situation in the north of Israel across the border. And so we're going to continue to pursue that because it's in the interest of all the parties involved, and most importantly, in the interest of the tens of thousands of Israeli and Lebanese families who have been displaced from their homes and want to be able to return home.
You said that Gallant indicated that they want a diplomatic resolution. Is that? Do you think is that shared across the Israeli government? Some of the actions, for example, the Prime Minister saying moving troops to the north. I know he cast it as defensive, but is that consistent with seeking a diplomatic resolution?
So there are a broad spectrum of actors inside the Israeli government, and I certainly wouldn't want to speak for all of them, but I can say in all of our meetings with senior government officials, including the Prime Minister, they have time and time again expressed to us that their preferred resolution is a diplomatic one.
Sure. There are a few non-Middle East things, but I imagine some people would keep on.
I imagine so.
If not,
Go ahead.
First, I just want to start off, see if I could ask you for a reaction to Medicine Sans Frontiers saying that one of their colleagues, Fadi al-Wadia, was killed in an attack this morning. The attack killed 5 other people, including 3 children. Do you have any comment on that?
So obviously we mourn the loss of any civilian life. I don't have any particulars with regard to that specific attack, but obviously we don't want to see any civilians killed in this conflict, and that's one of the reasons why we continue to pursue a ceasefire.
I want to take a step back for a second, if I could, and just go over, over the past 9 months, folks in this room have repeatedly raised potential war crimes and crimes against humanity committed by Israel in Gaza. That has included repeated mass casualty events that have resulted from strikes, sexual abuse in detention, allegations thereof, and as well as malicious destruction of civilian property. In many of these cases, you've called on Israel to investigate itself. Generally speaking, are you satisfied with how your ally has responded to these appeals?
So I'm going to say that they have a number of open investigations into potential war crimes. I don't want to pass judgment on how those investigations have been conducted until they have concluded, and there are a number of them that are ongoing. I will say, though, separate and apart from what Israel is doing, the United States is undertaking its own reviews of potential war crimes in this conflict, and those reviews are ongoing, and that's separate from anything that Israel is doing. Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. There are some reports speaking about that Hamas is thinking to move from Qatar to Iraq, and the Iraqi government approved it to host the Hamas leaders last month. Do you have any comments, and have you seen these reports?
So I've seen the report. I addressed this at the briefing yesterday. We've made clear that no country should carry out business as usual with Hamas since the horrific actions of October 7th, and we would hope no country would provide a safe haven for Hamas.
Have you received any signs, any indication from the Iraqi government that?
Just not going to speak to private diplomatic conversations.
Okay, and second question, the Islamic resistance in Iraq, repeatedly they are threatening the U.S. forces to leave Iraq, and what they said in their last statement, the 4-month guarantee that they gave it to Iraqi government to work with you to set a deadline for the U.S. withdrawal in Iraq has passed and it's been expired. So they're saying that they are going to resume their attacks on the U.S. forces in Iraq if there is no deadline for the U.S. withdrawal in Iraq. So this is not something that you are wishing for. So how are you going to prevent these attacks not be resumed in Iraq?
So with respect to the status of U.S. forces in Iraq, I'm going to defer that to the Pentagon ultimately to speak to. But we have long made clear that our forces in Iraq are there at the invitation of the government of Iraq to conduct anti-terrorist activities that benefit the Iraqi people. And if our forces are attacked, we will respond appropriately and hold those responsible accountable.
And do you take these statements seriously when they are saying we're resuming the attacks on the U.S. forces if they are not?
I think I'll rest on what I just said a moment ago about what our posture is towards any entity that would attack U.S. forces. Stay in the region. Yeah, Jackson, go ahead.
Thanks, Matthew. Sorry. So, if Israel does plan to intensify combat along its northern border with Lebanon, will we get forewarned to get U.S. citizens clear?
I'm not going to deal with a hypothetical. We are trying to avoid an escalation in this conflict, but obviously the safety and security of U.S. citizens overseas is our first priority, and we always monitor ongoing dynamics and advise U.S. citizens accordingly.
And Canada is reportedly considering plans to evacuate its citizens from Lebanon. Is the U.S. considering similar evacuation plans or changes to its Lebanon travel advisory here soon?
I believe I got this question 5 minutes ago and answered it. It's something that we always monitor when it comes to the safety and security of American citizens, but I don't have any updates to the travel.
And then finally, the House GOP appropriations bill for the State Department it consists of a cut in funding. What's the administration's response to that?
I'm not going to comment on proposed legislation from here. Sam, go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you. A couple of questions, if I could. It's been a while. The U.S. vetoed multiple UN Security Council resolutions for ceasefire over the last several months, of course, but finally drafted one itself, which claimed that Israel had accepted the ceasefire. You say that they did. Other people don't see it that way. My question is about the timing. It came just after the latest orders from the International Court of Justice. On May 24th, they ordered Israel to not invade Rafah. And they stipulated that the invasion had in fact started on May 7th. Was that the actual purpose of the U.S. backing that resolution at that time in order to forestall the UN Security Council doing its normal job of instituting the Security Council,
No, it was not.
the ICJ orders?
No, it was not. Our purpose in backing that resolution is we saw Israel put forward a proposal that we thought offered a real chance for not only a ceasefire, but an enduring end to the conflict that would return the hostages home to be reunited with their families, that would alleviate the suffering of the Palestinian people, that would set the conditions potentially for lasting peace. And we thought it was important that the entire world rally around that proposal, and that's why we put that resolution forward.
You talk about the hostages. Israel has a Hannibal directive in which it has orders in place to kill at least its own soldiers, lest they fall into the hands of Palestinian groups. And there's substantial reporting that in fact, was utilized on October 7th, not just against Israeli soldiers, but against civilians. Are we not now in a situation where Israel may be using the Hannibal Directive, not just on Israelis, civilians and military, but on U.S. citizens and other foreign nationals?
So I am not familiar in any way with either that supposed directive or those reports. And so
you've never heard of the Hannibal?
Certainly would not want to comment on it.
You've never heard of the Hannibal
John,
Directive?
Do you want to? I thought you wanted to go out of the region.
Sure. Julian Assange.
Yeah.
Somebody you
Thought we'd get around there eventually.
I sort of expected you were going to say it's an ongoing judicial matter, but
you're going to ask anyway.
Let me try. What was the importance for the United States of reaching a plea deal with him? Why was it important to settle this?
So you're right. It is an ongoing judicial matter, and so I am really limited in what I can say, where I can't really say anything about that. I know that the Justice Department has published court documents related to this case. I know he's scheduled to appear in court in the coming hours, and given that it is a pending case that is about to go before a federal judge, I think it's appropriate for me to not comment on the matter at this time.
Sure. I'll try a little bit more, but obviously he's an Australian citizen. Can you talk about the nature of discussions between the United States and Australia at the diplomatic level? How was this important to resolve for the sake of the alliance between the U.S. and Australia?
Again, I think while the matter is pending, it's important for me not to comment on it at all. Maybe tomorrow we'll have more to say, but I think today I should refrain from commenting and defer to the Department of Justice.
Okay, unless anybody wants to pursue that.
Yeah, go ahead.
This obviously has been a source of disagreement between Australia and the United States. Do you consider that this matter is now on the cusp of being resolved?
So I appreciate you trying, but I think I'm going to go back to the days when I was the Department of Justice spokesperson, and when we had a matter pending in court that was about to go for a federal judge, I think I very much would have objected to the State Department spokesperson opining on it from the podium before the matter was resolved, so I'm going to decline to do so today. So, and I'm sorry.
Well, then maybe you could tell us what you think about having this case heard by a judge in a trench
I think that is
in the Pacific Ocean.
I think that is a matter for the Department of Justice to comment on, not the State Department.
I was wondering if his release is sort of a relief for the State Department when it comes to your engagement with.
I hate to interrupt, but I only interrupt to say you're going to get the same answer that I have given with respect to the other questions. It just isn't appropriate for me while this is pending and about to go for a federal judge to comment on any way.